Welcome back to Aisha Stories. We love having you here. Before we get started, please kindly subscribe and turn on the notification icon so we can bring you more amazing stories. The morning Obinna stepped onto the tarmac of Murtala Mohammed International Airport, cameras swarmed. They weren't invited, but somehow they always knew. Obinna didn't flinch. He adjusted his fitted grey kaftan, eyes shaded behind gold-rimmed glasses, and walked with the kind of calm only people who had seen war on their way up could wear like a crown. Behind him, a convoy of dark SUVs idled, engines purring like loyal dogs waiting to follow their king. Lagos welcomed him with heat and a strange, humming tension in the air. He hadn't returned to Nigeria publicly since he became Africa's youngest billionaire. His companies ran across fintech, real estate, and digital infrastructure. His story had spread like wildfire, but still, only fragments were truly known. The headlines called him the boy genius, the self-made prodigy. But they didn't know the truth. Inside one of the SUVs, Ngozi sat silently, eyes scanning the roadside. Her hair was now wrapped in a soft cream-colored scarf. The years had aged her beautifully, pain etching strength into every wrinkle. She hadn't said much since they landed. Obinna had looked at her briefly when they boarded the jet from Cape Town, the unspoken weight of everything they'd survived hovering between them. She had raised him alone, built a fortress of love with empty pockets, and now they were back, together. "Are you ready?" he asked her quietly as they neared the new estate he had purchased in Banana Island. Ngozi looked at him, her voice low. "You think it's you they want to see. But it's me too. The past is waiting." That evening, as the sun dipped and Lagos lights began flickering to life, the press conference began. Obinna took the stage in a white agbada embroidered with silver. His voice echoed calm, but every sentence was measured, deliberate. He spoke of his plans to launch a tech hub in Nigeria, to train 1 million youth in digital skills over the next 5 years. The crowd cheered, but not everyone was clapping. Myra Okonkwo, seated at the back of the conference hall, watched him like a hawk. Young, brilliant, and bold, she was a reporter who had built her career on unearthing what people buried. Her editor had given her 3 words last month: find the crack. And she had. Through whispers, rumors, a few disgruntled voices, she learned the name Ngozi. A woman no one in Obinna's current circle spoke about publicly. Myra had seen her step out of the SUV, her head bowed, her movements measured. That wasn't just an old caretaker. That was something deeper. Myra pulled out a photo from her file, a grainy shot taken 2 decades ago. Chief Ifediora, laughing at a wedding, his hand resting too comfortably on the shoulder of a young maid in the background. That maid? Myra was sure it was Ngozi. The next day, Myra followed them. She was careful, using bikes and switching cars, documenting moments. Obinna visited an old primary school, donating tablets and building renovations. Cameras loved it. But Myra wasn't watching the charity. She was watching who he greeted, who he avoided, who looked at him with pride, and who looked away. Later that night, Obinna stood alone on the balcony of his high-rise, the city stretching endlessly below him. He didn't notice that Ngozi was behind him until she spoke. "You know he's still alive, right?" Obinna stiffened. "Chief." She nodded. "In Enugu. Weak, but breathing. A man like him doesn't die easily. Why didn't you tell me this before?" Ngozi's voice was steady. "Because I wanted you to live, not burn." Obinna turned away, the muscles in his jaw tight. "I need to see him." Ngozi placed a hand on his shoulder. "Not for revenge. Not to remind him of what he did. Go only if you're ready to forgive or forget. Anything else will poison you." As Obinna turned back inside, a drone hovered quietly 2 buildings away. Myra watched her screen, zooming in on their balcony. She had her story now, but she wasn't sure anymore if exposing it would ruin him or finally set him free. Far away in Enugu, Chief Ifidiora lay in a quiet room, a nurse adjusting his pillows. His eyes, once sharp and full of cruelty, now blinked slowly, waiting. Something told him the past was coming back. And it would knock louder than before. The Enugu morning was slow and humid. A soft mist hovered above the rooftops, carrying with it the weight of unspoken stories. Inside a weathered mansion with flaking white paint and creeping vines along the fence, Chief Ifidiora sat on a recliner, draped in a thick wrapper. The man who once ruled boardrooms and living rooms with the same fire in his voice now needed help to sip water. His nurse, Chika, was used to his silence. They barely spoke. Most days, he stared out the window, trapped in a loop only he understood. But this morning, his eyes were restless. He kept glancing at the door, as if expecting someone. "You know WNET, Chief?" Chika asked, placing a bowl of yam porridge on a tray. "Today," Chief said, voice gravelly, "he'll come today." Chika blinked. "Who, sir?" The chief gave no answer. Back in Lagos, Myra sat in her modest apartment filled with stacks of files, photographs, voice notes, and a large corkboard of interlinked faces. Obina's face sat in the center, strings running from him to others. His mother, anonymous school records, a blurred church baptism certificate, and now, finally, Chief Ifidiora. But there was a problem. The story was explosive, but Myra's gut twisted every time she thought about releasing it. This wasn't just another scandal. This was a child born of betrayal, now a man walking the corridors of power. To publish this would bring the whole world to Obina's door. But what would it do to Ngozi? She pulled out a voice recorder and played back her interview with one of the former maids from Chief's old house. "Ngozi? That girl suffer. But she get fire. When she run, she no even look back. We hear say she carry bell. Chief nearly mad that week." Myra paused the tape. "Fire. Yes. Ngozi was the fire in this whole story. Not Chief. Not even Obina." In Banana Island, Obina moved through his morning slowly. He had slept very little. After the conversation with his mother, he felt an ache in his chest that no money could fix. He sat in his home office, scrolling through photos of a man he barely remembered. Chief Ifidiora. A face from an old, buried nightmare. His mind wandered to the day he first realized he didn't have a father like the other kids. It was during a school event. Other children had both parents cheering. He only had Ngozi. When he asked her later, she told him, "You were made in pain, but raised in love." At the time, it had confused him. Now he understood. He picked up his phone. His assistant, Tobe, picked up instantly. "Book a flight to Enugu. Quiet. No media. And get me a marker. Tell her it's urgent." Tobe hesitated. "You sure you want a marker involved?" "Yes. I trust her." That evening, as the private jet hummed through the skies, Ngozi sat in her room alone. She knew where her son was going. And part of her wanted to stop him. But another part, the mother in her, knew it was time. No more shadows. In Enugu, a marker arrived first. She was taller than she used to be, elegance replacing the girl-next-door energy she once carried. She had lived in Abuja for years, working in social advocacy, and had always stayed close to Ngozi like a sister. When she walked into the mansion, Chief squinted. "You," he croaked. Amaka did not smile. "You remember me. Good. Because I remember everything." He coughed, reaching for his water. "Where is he?" "Coming. But first, you need to know, this isn't your stage anymore. Whatever you're planning, drop it. You don't have that power now." The chief gave a faint chuckle. Power never leaves. It only hides. 2 hours later, Obina entered. He was dressed simply, dark jeans, a soft cotton shirt, and eyes that carried the weight of someone who had rehearsed this moment for years. He stood over the man. Chief stared up, slow recognition creeping over his face. So, he rasped, you grew into a man. I grew into everything you tried to kill, Obinna replied. Silence stretched. Chief looked at Amaka, then back at Obinna. Why come here? Pity? Revenge? Obinna stepped closer. Closure. You think this talk will heal your mother? Or erase what I did? Obinna's jaw tightened. No. But you will speak. Not to me. To her. Face to face. One last time. Then you'll never see us again. Chief shifted in his seat, old pride mixing with new shame. I won't beg her. Good, Obinna said. She doesn't need your apology. She needs her dignity returned. In Lagos, Myra received an anonymous message. Wait before you publish. Some truths deserve a full ending. Attached was a location pin. In Ugu. Myra stared at the message. Her pulse quickened. The story was still alive, breathing, evolving. And something told her. The end was just beginning. The city buzzed with quiet unease. Lagos, that sprawling web of life, ambition, and restless dreams, felt different today, as if a storm was gathering just beyond the horizon. Obinna's new tech hub was a symbol of hope for thousands, a shining beacon promising futures built on code and innovation. But behind the curtain, shadows stretched long, waiting. Zikora sat in her sleek glass office, high above the city streets, tapping her fingers on the mahogany desk. Her sharp eyes scanned the latest reports on Obinna's ventures. She had followed his meteoric rise with both envy and calculation. The youngest billionaire in Africa wasn't just a man. He was a threat to her empire, a puzzle she was determined to break. A sly smile curled on her lips as she summoned her closest advisors. It's time we remind Obinna that no empire is built without cracks, she said, voice smooth and cold. The room nodded in agreement. Meanwhile, across the city, Obinna was unaware of the storm brewing. He sat with Amaka and Tobe in a modest cafe, poring over plans for the upcoming youth training programs. Amaka's voice was steady but filled with concern. This expansion will change lives, Obinna. But you can't ignore what's coming. There are forces that want to see you fail. Obinna sipped his coffee, eyes distant. I know, but every empire faces enemies. The question is how you face them. Tobe, usually quiet and reserved, leaned forward. There's talk in the streets, sir. Hackers probing your networks, strange glitches in the system. It's not random. Obinna nodded slowly. We've been warned. Far from the city's pulse, Myra sat in her cramped office, the walls plastered with maps, photos, and scribbled notes. Her investigation into Obinna's past had taken her down dangerous roads littered with whispers of corruption, betrayal, and old wounds that refused to heal. But she wasn't just chasing a story anymore. She was chasing the truth behind a man who had become a symbol. Her phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. Meet me. I have information that will change everything. Lagos, 9 p.m. Come alone. Myra's heart raced. She debated for a moment, then nodded to herself. The truth had a price, and she was willing to pay it. That night, under the pale glow of street lamps, Myra made her way through winding alleys to an abandoned warehouse. Inside, a figure waited in shadows. As she approached, the figure stepped forward, a former insider from Chief Ifediora's circle, a man who had seen the family's darkest secrets. Obinna isn't just a billionaire because of hard work, he whispered. There are people from the past who want to see him fall. And Zikora? She's just the beginning. Back in his office, Obinna stared at the city skyline, the weight of his legacy pressing down. The battle was no longer just about business. It was personal, and the only way forward was through the fire. Outside, a lone drone zipped silently, capturing every move, every word. The game had changed. The lines between friend and foe blurred, and Obinna realized that in this world, trust was the most dangerous currency of all. The morning light filtered through the tall windows of Obina's office, casting long shadows on the polished floors. The weight of the night's revelations still clung to him like a heavy cloak. His mind raced, piecing together fragments of secrets whispered in that abandoned warehouse. The web was thicker than he imagined, spun tightly by unseen hands. Tobe entered quietly, holding a tablet displaying lines of code and surveillance footage. "Sir, the breaches have increased overnight. Someone's trying to get inside our systems. It's precise, calculated. They know what they're after." Obina rubbed his temples, the pressure building. "This isn't just business sabotage. They're going after everything we've built." A marker appeared at the door, her expression fierce. "And they're closer than you think. I've been digging into Zikora's past. She's not just a rival. She's connected to Chief Efidiora in ways we didn't know." Obina's eyes darkened. "The past keeps pulling us back." Hours later, in a hidden room beneath a nondescript building, Zikora met with her allies. Her voice was sharp, each word cutting through the stale air. "Obina's weakness is his past. If we expose it, his empire will crumble. We have to act quickly before he tightens his circle." Her second-in-command, a young man named Ease, nodded. "The media are ready to explode with rumors. We just need to push the right buttons." Meanwhile, Ngozi sat alone in her small apartment, memories flooding her. The pain of the past, the sacrifices, the nights spent worrying for Obina's safety. Her phone buzzed, a message from Obina: "I need you. It's time." Tears welled in her eyes. The journey wasn't over. That evening, Obina and Ngozi met in a quiet park far from the city's glare. The breeze carried the scent of blooming flowers, a fragile peace between them. "I'm scared," Obina admitted. "Not of the fight, but of losing you." Ngozi reached out, squeezing his hand. "We've survived worse. Together." As darkness fell, Myra sat back in her office, piecing the story into a narrative that could shake the nation. But she hesitated. The truth was a double-edged sword, capable of freeing or destroying. Outside, the city pulsed with life, unaware of the storm about to break. The lines between past and present, power and pain, love and betrayal were blurring. And in the heart of it all, Obina prepared to face his greatest challenge yet. The city never really slept, but tonight Lagos hummed with a restless energy, as if the streets themselves held their breath, waiting for what was to come. Obina sat alone in his penthouse, the skyline a dazzling spread of lights below. But inside, his world felt darker than the night outside. The faces from the past haunted him, the ghosts of betrayals, sacrifices, and secrets he wished he could bury forever. Ngozi's words echoed in his mind: "We've survived worse. Together." Yet the battle now was different. It wasn't just about survival. It was about reclaiming what was stolen and facing a legacy tainted by lies. He turned to his desk where a thick file lay open, filled with documents he'd gathered over the last weeks. Every paper, every photo was a piece of a puzzle that stretched back decades. Names, dates, events, all leading to one cold truth. Chief Efidiora's grip on power ran deeper than anyone realized. And Zikora was his shadow, moving with calculated precision to dismantle Obina's empire. Suddenly, his phone buzzed. A message from a marker: "Meet me at the old warehouse by the docks. We have new information. Be careful." Obina grabbed his jacket, a knot tightening in his stomach. The docks were quiet at this hour, the smell of salt and rust mixing with the night air. A marker was already there, her face pale but determined. "We intercepted communications," she said, handing him a tablet. "Zikora's group is planning something big. Not just a smear campaign. Something that could ruin you and everyone you care about." Obina scrolled through the files. Plans for cyber attacks, misinformation leaks, even threats aimed at Ngozi. The enemy wasn't just out to hurt his business. They wanted to break his family. "We need to move fast," a marker urged. But we can't do this alone. Back in her modest home, Myra stared at her computer screen, the draft of her expose open but untouched. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, torn between revealing the truth and protecting those caught in its crossfire. She had been warned, threatened even, but her resolve remained. The story had to be told. The world needed to know. Elsewhere, Zikora met with powerful figures in a shadowy room, her voice dripping with venom. Obinna thinks he can escape the past. But every empire built on secrets falls. We will be the ones to tear him down. Her allies nodded, eyes gleaming with ambition and greed. As dawn approached, Obinna stood on the balcony, the city stretching endlessly before him. He thought of Ngozi, the woman who had raised him with strength and love against all odds. She was his anchor, his reason to fight. He whispered into the morning air, "This is just the beginning." And somewhere in the shadows, the game played on, with stakes higher than ever before, where trust was fragile, and every move could be the last. The sun dipped low over Lagos, its orange glow spilling through the tall glass windows of Obinna's headquarters. Inside, the atmosphere was tense, electric with a mix of determination and dread. The war was no longer just about money or power. It was about survival, about legacy, about the scars of the past that refused to heal. Obinna sat in the conference room, surrounded by his closest allies. Amaka was there, her face set with unwavering resolve. Tobe, normally quiet, looked every bit the soldier ready for battle. They pored over strategy, plans woven like intricate tapestries, each thread carefully designed to outmaneuver Zikora's moves. Obinna's phone buzzed with messages, warnings from security teams, whispers from the media, and the constant hum of digital threats. The cyber attacks had escalated. False stories about him and Ngozi were spreading like wildfire, designed to erode public trust and rip apart his carefully built reputation. But Obinna refused to break. He leaned forward, voice steady. "We fight with truth. We show them who we really are. Not just the stories they want to tell, but the lives we've lived. Ngozi raised me from nothing. That story is our strongest weapon." Amaka nodded. "Then it's time to bring her out of the shadows." Meanwhile, in a small, dimly lit room not far from the city's heart, Ngozi prepared for a moment she had long feared. The years of hiding, the silent nights filled with worry, the sacrifices she'd made, all led to this. She wasn't just a mother anymore. She was a force ready to reclaim her story. She sat down in front of a camera, the bright lights washing over her, exposing every line and every scar. The crew was respectful but persistent, knowing the weight of her words. "People need to know the truth," Ngozi began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I was a house help, betrayed by the man I trusted most. But I chose love over shame, strength over silence. My son didn't come from privilege, he came from resilience." As she spoke, the world listened. Social media exploded with support, with tears and admiration for a woman who had risen from the ashes of betrayal to raise the youngest billionaire in Africa. But Zikora was watching too. Furious and desperate, she doubled down on her attacks, leaking fabricated evidence, stirring old wounds, trying to fracture Obinna's foundation. In the midst of this chaos, Myra sat in her office, torn. She had the full story now, a tale of pain, power, and redemption. But she also saw the faces of those who could be hurt, the delicate balance between truth and destruction. Her phone rang. On the other end was a voice she hadn't heard in years, a key player from the shadows offering an unexpected alliance. "You want the full truth? Meet me. There's more at stake than you realize." Obinna, Ngozi, Amaka, and Myra, all players in a game far bigger than themselves. And as the night deepened, so did the stakes. Because in this world, truth was not just a weapon, it was the final battleground. The city seemed quieter than usual as Obinna walked through the streets of Lagos late that evening, the glow of streetlights casting long shadows around him. The weight of the battles ahead pressed heavy on his shoulders, but beneath it all, a fire burned bright, unshakable and fierce. Every step felt like a choice between the past's dark grip and the promise of a new dawn. At his side was Amaka, her eyes scanning their surroundings, vigilant as always. "They are watching," she murmured. "We can't trust anyone outside this circle." Obinna nodded, memories of betrayal still fresh. "That's why we need to tighten our inner circle, strengthen our bonds." They moved toward a small, nondescript building tucked away from the city's glittering facade. Inside, the air was thick with anticipation. Tobe was already waiting, his fingers tapping nervously on a keyboard. On the screens before them, maps, data streams, and faces flickered. The war was being fought in silence and shadows. Suddenly, the door creaked open. Myra stepped inside, her presence bringing a strange mix of hope and unease. "I have something," she said, voice low but urgent. "An ally from the past reached out to me. Someone who knows more about Chief Ifediora's secrets than anyone else alive." Obinna's eyes narrowed. "We need every piece of the puzzle." As Myra relayed what she had learned, the room fell into a heavy silence. The story was deeper and darker than any of them imagined. Webs of corruption that stretched back decades, implicating powerful men and women who would stop at nothing to keep their secrets buried. "We have to be careful," Amaka warned. "This isn't just about business or betrayal anymore. It's about survival." Ngozi, who had quietly joined the meeting, placed a hand on Obinna's shoulder. "We've come this far. We won't stop now." The group began to plot their next moves, strategies to expose the truth while protecting those they loved. It was a delicate dance, a game where one wrong step could lead to ruin. Outside, unseen eyes tracked their every move. Zikora's forces were tightening the noose, spreading rumors and lies, planting fear and doubt. But Obinna and his allies had something more powerful than secrets or money. They had resilience and truth. As dawn approached, Obinna stood by the window, watching the city wake. His mind was already racing ahead, planning for the battles yet to come. The past had shaped him, but it would not define him. Because in the heart of Lagos, a new story was being written, one of courage, redemption, and the unbreakable bonds of family. The city was still waking when Obinna stood on the rooftop of his headquarters, the first light of dawn turning the sky into a canvas of soft pinks and golds. Below, Lagos stirred to life, horns honking, vendors setting up their stalls, people rushing to work. But up here, above the noise and chaos, Obinna allowed himself a moment of quiet. The battles behind him, the war ahead, all weighed on his mind, but the silence was brief. The day called him back. Inside the building, his team was already hard at work. Amaka was coordinating with media outlets to release Ngozi's interview and their joint statements, ready to flood the airwaves with the truth. Tobe monitored cybersecurity defenses, ensuring the networks were shielded from the next wave of attacks. Myra prepared her final report, weaving the threads of their story into a narrative that would shake the foundations of the city's power structures. Obinna met with Ngozi in the conference room. Her eyes, tired but unyielding, held the strength that had fueled his rise. "We're no longer running from the past," he said quietly. "We're confronting it." Ngozi nodded. "This story isn't just ours. It's for every person who's been silenced, betrayed, or pushed down. We stand for them now." As the day unfolded, their carefully crafted plan went into motion. The media exploded with Ngozi's powerful testimony, paired with Myra's investigative expose exposing Chief Ifediora's corruption and Zikora's schemes. Social media buzzed with support and outrage, conversations igniting across communities and boardrooms alike. But the fight wasn't over. Zikora retaliated with legal threats, smear campaigns, and whispers of scandal aimed at Obinna's closest allies. The pressure mounted, but instead of breaking them, it forged them stronger. In the midst of the storm, Obinna received an unexpected visit. a figure from his past who had once been an adversary but now offered an olive branch. "The old guard is crumbling," the visitor said. "It's time for new alliances." Obinna considered the offer carefully. Trust was fragile, but survival demanded open hands as well as closed fists. That evening, as Lagos lights flickered on one by one, Obinna stood with Ngozi on their balcony, looking out at the city they had fought so hard to change. "This is just the beginning," he said. Ngozi smiled, hope shining in her eyes. "Together, we can build something better. For us, and for those who come after." The past had tested them, torn at their roots, but it could not stop the new story rising from the ashes. A story of resilience, love, and the unyielding power of truth. And as the night settled, a new dawn was breaking over Lagos, brighter than ever before. Thanks for watching Aisha Story Lovers. Kindly let us know the country you are watching from and what your time says right now. We love you.